Hello and welcome to the February 22nd edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson outside of the State House here in Columbia. Well, business just concluded today, this Thursday, and we just wrapped up the 7th week of the legislative session here in Columbia. Now, the House did move along several bills today, including bills dealing with telemedicine, human trafficking penalties, and a spin-off bill dealing with the governor, lieutenant governor, running on the same ticket. That's a whole situation we've been covering, and we have some more details on all those bills in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about what we saw over in the Senate, which was a little bit of inactivity due to a filibuster continuing by Senator Marlon Kimpson over H3929, which is that chicken farm bill. We again have some more details on that. Didn't really go anywhere. The filibuster continues, but we did see some activity outside of the Senate in a Senate Judiciary subcommittee on a bill dealing with gun violence in school, folks threatening gun violence in schools. This bill moved out of the subcommittee to the full committee, and let's get some more details on that right now. A Senate panel moved the bill S-431, which would make anyone threatening to use a gun for violence in a school a crime, to the full Judiciary Committee on Thursday. Charleston Republican Senator Sandy Sen said her bill is needed, especially following increased threats after the Parkland, Florida shooting, and added it wouldn't criminalize child's play, which some senators were concerned about.
There are plenty of laws that would help us if somebody actually threatened to blow up a school with an incendiary device, or if they threatened an individual, like cyberbullying. But there is no law that, or sometimes disturbing the schools is what these kids are arrested for, but there is no law that really hits it dead on point to allow our police officers to go in there and make an arrest with what they feel is a threat to blow up or harm or shoot up a school with violent weapons. And so this would allow our officers to go in, make a detention, and then determine whether they need to make an arrest and then get these kids, because it's almost always kids who attended that school or still attend the school who do the shooting. So what we would try to do is then get them into the hands of mental health providers or anger management providers and try to prevent awful things like this from happening.
Prosecuting children for child's play. I am on board with the intent of the legislation, but as you know, we have a issue with school-to-prison pipeline, and so what we want to be careful to avoid is having an overly broad definition of threaten to the extent that children, I can recall when I was little, I never fought in school. I always had an extensive vocabulary, so I would use words rather than my fists. But we want to make sure we aren't prosecuting children for mere child's play.
As you've seen probably in the newspapers over the last several days, we've actually had a spike in this since the Parkland shooting last week down in Florida. That we actually had 4 incidents yesterday where individuals were arrested for these types of offenses. And those are situations, again, where we are trying to get that person and charge that person with an offense that is adequate and fits the crime. That doesn't always happen. Right now, those individuals have been charged with disturbing schools, as Senator Sen mentioned, and some other unlawful communications. But at the end of the day, we need to have a bill, a statute that squarely and adequately addresses this issue. And I want to be clear that we're not trying to. We don't believe that we can imprison our way out of this, or that we can penalize our way out of this. But all too often, it takes a charge and going through the justice system process to get that person the help that they need, whether that's mental health counseling, anger management, whatever else it is. We need to be able to have this charge to go through the court process to get them through that situation. So we understand that we're not going to penalize or imprison our way out of this, but we definitely need some help in trying to get some better solutions.
As Senate lawmakers did take up S-516 after they approved S-431, which is Sen's bill dealing with school violence and threatening school violence. However, S-516, which deals with expedited reporting to background check databases in the country, didn't move as far today. They're still hung up on it. They carried it over. They ran out of time today to debate it, and they're still looking into more details about just how that process would work, as well as expanding the gun background check time from 3 days to 5 days. Now that usually happens when, say, someone gets flagged for a background check when they're trying to purchase a gun. The FBI has 3 days to officially say yay or nay on whether that person can purchase a gun. If they don't get that background check completed in time, then the gun purchaser can go ahead with that gun purchase. Now sometimes with this bill, now that they're proposing, they could extend that background check time to 5 days. Now some lawmakers said that that would make a difference. We heard from some officials, some people in the law enforcement community that said that any additional time would help, especially after what we saw with Dylan Roof, who was a shooter in the Charleston AME Church massacre in 2015, who made it through the loophole because he didn't get his background check done in time and therefore got authorization to go ahead and purchase a gun that he later used in shooting 9 folks at that Charleston church. The House Ways and Means Committee wrapped up a week of deliberations by approving the $8.2 billion 2018-2019 budget bill. The budget proposal includes a 2% pay raise for teachers, making the minimum salary $32,000 for teachers. Lawmakers only have about $290 million in additional money to spend next year for the budget, much of which has been eaten up by increased health care costs. There's also $145 million in one-time dollars as well. Now staffers will prepare the budget for floor debates slated for mid-March. Over in the House, lawmakers easily approved several bills today, including one that would increase penalties for human traffickers that traffic minors under the age of 18. Now, this would increase the sentence for these people that traffic minors under the age of 18 to 30 years, a maximum of 30 years. Here's some more details from Representative Russell Fry on his bill.
2 years ago, this body passed unanimously a human trafficking bill. We've got a good law on the books. And we sent that bill over to the Senate where it died. This year and last year, we've been working with the Attorney General's office and the Children's Committee to kind of clarify a couple things and get stuff done. So I would ask that this body support it. It's a great step for minor victims of human trafficking, and take any questions.
House lawmakers also approved a telemedicine bill today, which will give nurse practitioners and physician assistants approval to practice via telemedicine.
All this does is allow nurse practitioners and physician assistants to practice via telemedicine right now. There is a little bit of a hiccup with the respective medical boards and the nursing boards who have said that they're not authorizing without some statutory they're not allowing without some statutory authorization for them to participate. Obviously, the telehealth is based upon having the practitioners, especially nurse practitioners and PAs, to do that. So that's all this does, is just allow them, with the consent of the boards, they've asked us to do this. So what we're doing is just allowing them to have the ability to practice telehealth so we can stop what the board had put a halt on.
Sumter Republican Representative Merrill Smith was back up at the well to push the standalone governor-lieutenant governor bill today, a day after it was introduced without reference. It sailed through and will reach the Senate next week.
And as I discussed yesterday, what this bill does is simply take the parts of that require the lieutenant governor and the governor to run together and have the election commission give them direction on how to handle the election. This is what this bill does. It does not do anything else that was in there. It doesn't deal with the issue of sending the constitutional officers and the Chief Justice to the Agency Salary Head Review Commission for a study, and doesn't do anything about consolidating any more power in the Senate into the President pro tempore having appointments. So what we're going to do is, we heard last week, as I told y'all, that we have storm clouds of brewing and that the election's going to be a mess, and we're going to have joint resolutions to pass to have the primaries pushed back. If that is a problem, which I don't agree that is a problem, but if it is a problem, this bill will fix it. It will be over in the Senate, and they can act upon it. And I wouldn't hold my breath to see them act upon it. They'll probably stand in line behind all the other bills that they're holding up over there.
And the chicken bill, H3929, remains in special order status in the South Carolina Senate. You might remember this bill. It loosens up regulations for chicken farming operations across the state, and also loosens DHEC's ability to regulate these operations, including how close they can be located to a residency. Now, Senator Marlon Kimpson, a Democrat from Charleston, has maintained the floor on this debate. He's been filibustering, waiting for some amendments to come along. So far, the ones that are out there are a little too broad for him. He wants to see some more detailed amendments surrounding this bill that, again, loosens regulations on DHEC's ability to regulate large chicken farming operations in the state. Now, during this filibuster, we did get to hear from a fellow filibuster, Senator Tom Davis. He's a Beaufort Republican. You might remember him from the Senate Roads Bill debate. He got to share a little bit of an anecdote from political history when he was former Governor Mark Sanford's chief of staff that involved 2 pigs in the House of Representatives here in the State House. Let's get a little history lesson here from Senator Davis.
Did you know that I think the record for a number of overridden vetoes is 106? Because did you know that Governor Sanford had 106 budget vetoes that were taken up by the House, each of the vetoes having been overridden on average with 45 seconds of debate? And I think that's only because that's how long it took for the boards to switch over. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that. And your point is that, does he hold the record?
He does, but this is my point. Did you know what his response was to that process whereby that number of vetoes was overridden in that amount of time? Did you know what his response was?
I do not know, but I'm sure you'll tell me.
Did you know that he carried up the stairs to the State House lobby 2 pigs and then put those pigs down on the floor outside of the House chamber? And did you know that was back in the day, Senator, before we had iPhones and instant communication? And did you know I had no idea when I was on the floor of the Senate that 2 pigs were coming up the stairs under Governor Sanford's arms? Were you aware of that?
Even as his chief of staff, you didn't know?
I did not know. And the reason that I found out about it was there was a representative from Charleston named Annette Young who saw the pigs and came bursting into the chambers and made a beeline right for me. And did you know, Senator, that if you're in the House long enough, you realize there's a back channel of your way out of that chamber down to the governor's office. And I quickly used that back channel to get down to the governor's office to figure out what was happening. And did you know that once I found out what was happening, that I went across the street to the bar and spent the rest of the afternoon there?
And that wraps up week 7 of the General Assembly here at the State House in Columbia. I guess the saying is true, time flies when you're having fun, or something like that. Now stick with SCE TV throughout the 2018 legislative session as we continue to bring you daily legislative updates every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, live at 7 p.m. on SCE TV's Facebook page, our YouTube page, and my Twitter account at Gavin Jackson. But our coverage doesn't stop there. We encourage you to listen to South Carolina Public Radio daily and also catch State House Week every Friday. You can also listen to and watch Charles Bierbauer on This Week in South Carolina at 7:30 on SCE TV. And if you like podcasts, which we are definitely trying to get people more involved in listening to podcasts, check out the South Carolina Lead. That's where I sit down with reporters who cover the State House to get more in-depth insight on what's going on up here in Columbia. You can subscribe to that on Apple Podcasts by searching South Carolina LEDE. I'm Gavin Jackson from the State House here in Columbia.